In this week's Technique Tuesday video, I'll knit perfectly joined hems using the 3-needle join. If you'd like to jump right to a specific point in the video, you can tap or mouse over the video playback area of the screen to reveal the chapter titles and starting points of each section. When a pattern calls for a knitted hem rather than a ribbed hem, there are 3 methods that are commonly used. One is to use a standard cast on, knit the fabric that will become the hem, and then as part of the finishing work, the cast on edge is flipped up and sewn to the wrong side of the work. The challenge with this technique is making sure that you're always sewing to the same horizontal line of stitches and that you are accurately matching up stitch column for stitch column as you sew. A second method also uses a standard cast on, but when you have knit the required length of the hem, you join the cast on edge to the live stitches by inserting your working needle through the live stitch as well as through the corresponding stitch at the cast on edge. This eliminates the problem of horizontal skewing, but you can still have an issue with keeping the columns lined up. The method I like, and that I'm going to show you today, starts with a provisional cast on. However many stitches you need to knit the hem will be cast onto each of the 2 needles, with 1 needle acting as a stitch holder while you knit the hem. You can then match up the hem perfectly by knitting together 2 live stitches, 1 from each needle. If you're using a pattern that instructs to use either of the first 2 methods, you can substitute this 3rd method instead. You're going to need 2 needles that have the same tip size, 2 circular needles with the same tip size. And you're going to cast on the number of stitches you need for the hem onto each of the needles. So if your pattern says cast on 100 stitches and then tells you how to work the hem, then you would need 100 stitches on each of these needles. So for this demonstration, I'm going to be casting on 15 stitches. And the method of provisional cast on I'm going to use is called Judy's Magic Cast On. If you have trouble with Judy's Magic Cast On, you could use the Turkish cast on or the figure 8 cast on. I'll leave links down in the video description to each of those 3, but any of those 3 will produce live stitches on both needles. So I'm going to do 15 onto each needle. And this is not a tutorial for Judy's Magic Cast On, so I'm not going slowly and explaining what I'm doing. I'm just casting on. So I have finished casting on. So both of these tips right now are turned toward the left. I'm going to rotate and turn toward the right. So I knit with the yarn in my left hand. It doesn't matter if you are knitting with your yarn in the right hand or the left hand. You're going to take the bottom needle and pull it out so that the stitches are resting on the cable. So from now on, this needle is just acting as a stitch holder for these live stitches. So you want to take the other end of the tip that on the upper needle. So I've got 2 different colors so you can tell. The red needle right here, and I'm going to work across all of these stitches. Now some knitted hems will have you work the first half of the hem, the part that will be on the inside of the garment as knit 1, purl 1 ribbing, and then they'll switch halfway through to stockinette. Other hems will have you knit it mostly in stockinette, and then maybe at the midpoint you'll have 1 right side purl row or 2 right side purl rows that are the turning rounds or turning rows. I'm going to work mine completely in stockinette. So I've gotten to the end of this first row. If I were working in the round, I would continue. I would just join to the other end. I would just work in the round, join this end to that end and work in the round. Since I'm working flat, the next row I'm going to work is going to be a purl row, so I switch back. So if you're used to Judy's Magic Cast On and you're used to working in the round across all of the stitches, you won't be doing that for this. You are using the cast on in order to just create these live stitches on the needle that are going to wait there. So I'm going to knit the rest of my hem, and then I will show you how it's joined together. So I've knit my hem to the desired length. Now I am knitting flat, so I need to make sure that when I join my hem, I have the right side facing me with the yarn hanging down here. So I need to be ready for a right side row when I join the hem. So I'm going to slide the needle that's been holding the cast on stitches. I'm going to slide it onto those live stitches, and then I'm going to fold that needle up, or fold the fabric up so that the two needles can be held parallel. So I have the two sets of stitches in parallel. I'm going to take the third needle tip, the one that matches with this red needle here, and now I'm going to work the stitches together. So I'm going to work the first stitch on each needle together. I'm going to stick my needle through the first stitch on the first needle and through the first stitch on the second needle. And then I'm going to grab the working yarn like I would for any knit stitch or for any knit two together, and I'm going to then pull that yarn through both stitches. So again, if you hold the yarn in your right hand, you would just wrap it like you would any normal knit stitch, and you'd pull it through those two stitches. So you need to pull it through both of those stitches, and then both of the old stitches need to come off the needle. So I did those simultaneously, and sometimes that works just fine for me to be able to pull it through the first and the second stitch and then knock both of them off the needle. But sometimes that can feel a little precarious, like maybe some of these live stitches are going to come off the needle. So what I typically do is I wrap the yarn, I bring it through that first one, and I hold this one. So I let that old one off the needle, and then I bring it through the front one and let that one off the needle. And I'm just keeping these fingers holding those live stitches. So you can do it either way. You can do it one at a time and then bring it through this one, or you can do it by pulling them through both of those stitches and then pushing both of them off. But again, I keep my thumb on those other live stitches to make sure that they're not going to come off the needle as the old stitches are coming off. Now I've joined the two sets of live stitches together, and I can just continue working my project on just these stitches here. So I recently finished this sweater project. This is one where I substituted the method that was called for, which was joining a cast-on edge to live stitches. And I used the method where I started with a provisional cast-on and then joined two sets of live stitches like I demonstrated today. So this is what the inside of that edge looks like. It's really indistinguishable from just switching from knits to purls. The 3-needle joint can be combined with binding off in order to seam together the live stitches of two horizontal edges. Instead of binding off the shoulders and then sewing them together, I used the 3-needle bind off for the shoulder seams of this sweater on the inside of the work, which creates a stable but slightly stretchy join. For the shoulder seams of this top, I used a finessed version of the 3-needle bind off on the right side of the work. The finessed version creates a decorative flat chain along that seam line. You can find links to video tutorials for those two techniques down in the video description, as well as to the screen on the right. If you have any comments or questions about this technique, you can leave those down in the comments below. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.